Although I've been really thinking about it because I got hockey fever.
What was his key?
Canada rules.
Yeah, for sure.
Shout out Canada.
We took down the Canadians, but
We've been shitting on Canada a lot throughout history.
we did shit on Canada.
Canada rules.
Pretty hard.
Canada's just what happens when white dudes are rocking.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think Canada's fucking the white dudes?
It's white dudes rocking.
I guess so. I mean, I don't know.
Hockey is just, they're like, oh, we like beer and a little hockey.
Yeah,
A
Canada.
couple of fights. You can have a fight with your buds.
Canada is a pretty.
Canada's just white dudes rocking.
It's a pretty white
100%.
country, isn't it?
I think they're getting diverse a little, and they don't like it, dude.
Really?
The conservative Canadians, dude.
How do they? Or like, hey,
They're like, hey, get these damn, I'm not gonna say it,
I'm not gonna
but
say
get
it.
them out of here.
I'm being polite about it.
Hey, man, don't even joke about that stuff.
I'm gonna be polite.
I'm gonna be
about
polite about how racist I am right now to these damn Inuits. Hey.
Yeah,
But I was watching.
'Cause I always thought Canada was a very tolerant place. I've always heard like if you go there as a black person, they're like it's like no one even notices. It's really chill.
Here we go. Blast off, episode 47 of the Canadian Talk podcast. How are we all doing? I thought I'd start off today's episode. So, doing my comedy research as I do. I've been looking into this one guy that I think is pretty popular in our province. I think he's one of the most popular guys right now in terms of the comedy realm. Other than like those other guys there, Leroy and Leroy, they're pretty popular. But they might be from Saskatchewan, I don't know. But there's these other guys who sit on a dock and they recite dad jokes, really. So I've had this book in the podcast room here since day one. I figured I would if they're gonna I'm not gonna say their names because I guess what I'm saying is a little bit negative, even though I don't mean to do that, but that's why I'm gonna do what you're doing. So I'm about to start reading this dad jokes book from the beginning. I've read it before, but like it's a joke book. But like let's just do it. Like if taking jokes is okay as long as you change the setting, then let's start each show with a dad joke until we have 100K followers like these guys do. This Corona is acting very weird. I hope a bee didn't go in there or something. I wonder if the camera caught a bee going in there. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so first dad joke in the book. Let's see, what do we got here? It just starts with all about people and things. Dad, will you hand me my sunglasses? As soon as you hand me my dad glasses, son. Question. What did the pen say to the other pen? Your ink readable. Okay, so there is the first two dad jokes in the dad joke book. And now we're just going to work our way through this fucking thing each episode, I suppose, because I guess that's what people do. But this is a book written by Jimmy Nairo, okay? And you got to give credit to the because I didn't write these, but they don't. So what are we doing here out in this game? So anyway, I guess that's enough groveling about joke thieves. We're here for episode 47. So what do we got going on immediately in my life? Well, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for clicking on the show. This is a podcast, Canadian Talk, and where I am basically an ex-sports player who never really was that good, but I still have that in me, and so I'm just here, and because this is the thing though, is I'm skipping a step with this podcast, and I know that. I just want to riff a little bit here again, like I always do, about why I'm underqualified for this, until one day where all of a sudden I'm dead, and then maybe I was qualified for a few days before I died. Normally people, like even Joe Rogan, right? Like when he started his, he had at least done a little bit of Fear Factor, a little bit of acting. I have done nothing. You do have to draw from what you've done, and I have nothing other than because I'm 29. You know, I have school, university, sports, and that's it. I really had a very shut-in, introverted life. So you know, the thing is though is stories are what you make them. You know, you don't have to have lots of people there for a story to be a good story. So if I could walk myself back a little bit from the negativity, let's come up with a little riff today and see how she goes. I didn't like that. And that was messy and that was horrible. So we're just going to leave that one as it is today. I don't seem to. That's the thing about music, right? And that's what makes it hard about being a musician or an athlete or whatever. A professional is expected to be able to do it every day. And I cannot. But that's why I'm not a professional harmonica player. So, yeah, welcome back to this show that we call Canadian Talk, where we sit here in the shop in the studio, and we talk about life. You know, podcasts are meant to be a hang. Because I'm getting more people as you do things in life. Like, let's say you're a freaking landscaper or whatever you're doing. You build a group of people, and you know, the groups they just get bigger and naturally, and that's been happening. And the city workers stopped working. They were just working out of the side of the house. They're doing. I wonder if you can hear that on the feed. They're probably listening. We have one live viewer right now listening to the pod just outside of the wall. One thing that I'm coming to notice with this show, and I don't know if this will always be a thing but like, I'm realizing that I didn't finish my thought from before. I will come back to that. That this medium might be best for two people. Like, it is almost every episode the solo episodes are a lot. Like, you really have to be a fan of somebody to sit down and watch them talk for an hour about whatever rolls onto their mind. You know, I that's a big ask in the podcast world. That's something I'm considering. Not that I'm going to adapt the show or change anything. It's just like, if you watch certain podcasts that have two guys, that's when it is the best, because both guys, it's not an interview, both guys are just riffing for comedy, which is awesome. I do have people that I bring on, and those are the best episodes. Well, the best by what standard, you know? So that is what it is. But yeah, next week I'm gonna have an episode with a young comedian that I've seen around the circuit. He's really he's good. I like what he's doing. As far as I can critique a person of a skill that I don't really have, which is live stand-up. So why does my opinion matter, eh? I think he plays hockey too, so maybe I'll critique his hockey. So enthusiastic, hey? So yeah, but what I was saying was that I don't really have anything to draw from. And that can be a challenge, you know? But then you look at a person and like, what is the only, you don't have to think that the only thing that's interesting in this world. That's why, you know, part of why I named us Canadian Talk and stuff too, is the only thing that's in Kardashians, like living luxurious lifestyles or being an actor or doing entertainment stuff, isn't the only thing that people want to hear about. They do want to hear about that stuff, and it can be coming from a regular person. Like, look at who's Candace Owens? I understand she's a political pundit now, so she's a thing, but like, a podcaster should be considered nothing more than that. Like, you're a social scientist at the point where you're studying society to relay it out as entertainment. I think that makes you become a thing, like a reporter, but not a reporter because it's actually honest. But is it honest though? Does any opinion become non-honest once it goes through the lens of a person, a single person? And the more people you add, does the lens become thicker and thicker with it being not real and not honest? Can that be considered a law of media? I wonder, because it sure feels correct. So yeah, today we got some fancy drinks. Corona Extras, some Mexicano beer. Because we made an extra big sale this week, we sold some islands and 16 benches to a local construction company, which was pretty awesome. So that's why we splurged on some import Mexicano beer. So we're gonna channel some of that Mexican energy. See, it's weird. I hate that I feel racist even saying Mexican. Should I say South American beer, Central American beer? It's annoying that the name of their ethnicity is almost a racial slur. But I mean, so is white or so is black. It's like saying, it's almost like in 2020, the 2020s, it's like saying any name of an ethnicity is just a racial slur. It's like literally referring to race is racism. It's becoming so sensitive. But I guess that's why comedians are surging through, because they're the last ones who everybody is envious of. Oh, these guys can still talk about race. Like, I want to talk about race. So then they watch, so to make sure to refine their opinions, they watch people not necessarily like me. I'm pretty refined in the racial arts a little bit, but yeah, that brings me back to a story from that bachelor party that I was on too, because that was a lot of what we were talking about in terms of a lot of the topics, the socio-political stuff that we were talking about was we were talking about a lot of it, and I have an understand right now, as I've studied through it and looked through a lot of stuff. I feel like, from an unbiased perspective, that you cannot, and this is the foundation of critical race theory, right? You cannot deny that there's a system in place, or a hierarchy of aesthetic, or if you will, or performance, or all of it, perception. Human perception, there's a hierarchy in the way that each person looks at race, and this is highly interweaved into our capitalist system, and that is a real problem, because a lot of people want to, when they're analyzing the situations and stuff, if you completely leave race out of a lot of it, it is oversimplifying the situation. So that's why I don't like people who are completely anti-critical race theory. I don't like it, because obviously the people who study it right now are radicals, so they're radicalizing it really quick. But I do believe that there is merit in that idea. So, yeah, that's that. That's a little bit of a riffing on critical race theory. But I was talking about how I don't have anything to draw from. And see, but this is my point, though, is who do we look to? Like, how do you become qualified? Just like with any job, right? Like, if I was to talk about my engineering job, right? Because I did engineering school, crushed it, blah, 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 worked as an engineer for 3, 4, like, I've got 4 years experience if you accumulate everything together, but they're super picky about this, that, and the other. You used to need no experience to be a professional licensed engineer. Then they made it 1, then they made it 2, now it's 4. It's ridiculous. And they're being so strict about what even qualifies. It's stupid. So that's my point, is I'm not even qualified to be an engineer. Like, how do you ever become qualified to comment, to be a commentary, to be a commenter? It's not just confidence. That's a huge part of it, but we all have to pick. I think that's why you pick. If you're going to be a democracy, the media also has to be. I think I figured it out. Just a second. If you're going to be a democracy, your media also has to be democratized. And that means that each person gets, because some people won't be happy with what's being played on Fox or on CNN or on one of the major things. By some people, I mean a lot of people, like 90% of people. So then in a democracy, what do? Because it's not like an authoritarian where you have to listen to the news. And this is the news and this is the one. So that's what this is. And so that's why there is no the qualification is you being here right now. By virtue of you being here or more of you being here, I become more qualified. I honestly think that media qualification does come down to that, which is so crazy. So crazy. I can't believe we've been going for 15 minutes already. Thank you for listening, everybody. Anybody who's here, maybe you clicked up to this point in the podcast, 15 minutes in. Oh, I forgot that I was gonna. So let me tell you about what's been going on. So I was getting the drone wired up because I was going to. There was some city workers out doing some cutting in the park by the studio here, and I was just gonna do a little fly around in the park and just go and zoom in on them and freak them out. But the drone needed an update. It had a bug. The drone software on my phone, I can't believe it, and I just updated it. So I'm pretty pissed about that because I thought that was gonna fix the bug. Another thing, two other things. There's three other things that you're going to be seeing on these upcoming. So you may have just, from the beginning, you may have watched a new audio clip that I'm going to be putting at the beginning. I got to ask the guy who's from the pod that I pulled. You don't have to. I think that you can use audio from the internet as long as there's, however much, more than 80% of the commentary is from you and da-da-da-da. There's copyright laws and rules, but... I'll probably still ask the source people anyway because I don't think they'll mind because I pulled this audio because I loved it. It is an excerpt from 7 minutes and 30 seconds in episode 311 of Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast. It's a podcast, one of the many I listen to. They're talking about Canadians and it is great. So you may have just heard it at the beginning of this where he's talking about, I forget exactly what he says, right? Because I can't put it perfectly like he can. He's just this refined 33-year-old comedian or whatever who's been... He's been refining his speech for however long he's been doing stand-up, probably a while. And he's in New York, so that's the real thick of it. The audio excerpt is him talking about Canadians. And he's like, dude, that's just white guys doing it right. I think he says doing it right, or that's just white guys being free or something. And he's like, oh, that's just hockey and beer, and there you go. That's what it is. So you will have just heard it. So I'm sounding like an idiot as I try to recount it, but I love it. That's why I'm going to put it at the beginning of this show, this episode. And that's the thing is, I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to. I may put it at the beginning of every episode. That's how much I love it, just to get us in the zone, ready, channeled to the Canadian talk sphere of thought. Just because that's what other podcasts do too, right? Like I know even on the Matt and Shane's podcast. Let's talk about them for a second. At the beginning of each episode, they always have a couple of little excerpts from things that they pull that, they might be special clips but I think sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're not. I think they're just shit they pull and hope for the best. So, but anyway, that's what I'm doing because I love this audio clip. So, and then what else is there? So that's the audio clip that you're going to hear. I'm going to be doing that crate challenge, which I was going to do today if I had the drone to film it. But the drone still needs an update, so you may not have seen that at the beginning of this episode because I want to release it today. Because today is Wednesday. I'm recording this day of, by the way. This is going to get released today. Crate challenge. I've got this cool vintage shirt on that I found in my piles. That wasn't one of the major things though. Now I'm just trying to remember what it was. So this is the deal. Okay. You know what? We're back. I'm gonna see if I can come up with this on the fly. I'm fucking so disappointed in myself. My vintage shirt distracted me from I said I had 3 or 4 things to list, and then I got through 2 or 3 of them. It's this Mexican beer. It's got me wilding right now. Oh, yes, I remembered, and this is why I needed to remember it, because it's a big deal. So I'm going to have to edit a minute out there for sure, but I'm going to keep that in because when I just thought of it for that 20-second pause there. I have a little track that you will also just have heard that it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be on the beginning of each episode, but it's a remix that a friend of the show sent in. He's a mix table guy. He's on TikTok for now. He's going to keep making me more remixes. But for right now, he didn't want to plug because he's one of those guys who wants success before he will put his name on something. Like, I don't know, it's a little soft, but It's a beat. It's an electronic beat that was made of some sounds from the show that I honestly love. It's only about 45 seconds, but it's like, and it rises. It's a beat drop, and then it falls, and it's pretty sick. So yes, I thought of it. Okay, so we're moving on. So that's what's coming up. On the beginning of this episode, you will have heard the funny audio drop that I put in of this comedian that I like talking about Canada, and this new clip of a electronic song that was made by a friend of the show, which is pretty sick. God, how hard is that? How fucking hard is that? It took me like 3-4 minutes to get that out of my goddamn skull. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with me? That's why there's some days where if you've watched any of the other episodes, there's some days where I'm rocking and rolling. In the winter, you're cold sometimes in the studio a little bit, and that really pulls it out of you. And I'm so relaxed right now. That might be why I'm having a tough time getting those thoughts flowing, But that's good. That's what it is. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about. Let's drop another dad joke. What do we say? And then let's talk. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the guests that I have coming up in the next little bit, because I didn't even mention his name when I said, "Oh, I got a kid coming on." But you know what? I want to talk about him for a second because I got a few things on my list here. Here's another dad joke. It was easy for me to master Braille once I got the feel of it. Oh, good Lord. That is so crude. That's just so crude. I'm not going to lie, right? Like, I love those. I loved them when I was younger, like a little kid, but that's why they're dad jokes, So, well, thanks for taking us on that little circle. Provided no extra information, sir. Yeah, so, again, I want to just talk more about what this show is again, because we are still early on. We're not even at episode 50. These are long form. You may be watching this, and for every once in a while, you may have a feeling. This is like you training your subconscious, and you training your attention span, like exercising for your mind, but it just makes every other task easier that requires attention span and logic and thought to figure out. This is meant to be long. This is for people who work for 8 hours a day and want something in their head while they do their mundane jobs, which is that, boom, that's 90% of men right there. That's what this is for. This is for people who drive trucks and they sit there all day. This is for people who sit in offices all day. So I don't do crude humor when time is of a factor. Time is of a factor. This is meant to be. You might even be. Some people like weirdos like me. I like this type of communication so much where this is what I do. I actually watch podcasts. The video version. That's why the video version has such low views. Usually the views on the YouTube is 1/10 of the views of just the audio, because that's what everybody's doing, right? Like, this is an audio entertainment. I don't play up much to the camera because what is most important here is the audio of what's being said. It's like music. So if you find yourself at any moment being like, if you're watching the video and you're like, damn, I should go watch Gossip Girl, just go watch Gossip Girl. Honestly, that's fine. I get it. That is probably, as a whole, it's more entertaining as like if you were to put it in a bucket and weigh it. But in terms of quality, this is something different, and that's just what it is. Okay. This is a raw podcast where it's like a cult, basically. You know what I'm saying? If you really get down to it, if you want to have words for what individualized media is, in a way, like the way that Chris D'Elia puts it, who's a comedian that I love a lot. But it's a joke. Remember, this isn't an actual cult. But you know what? It isn't a joke. It is kind of a cult. It's just kind of how serious you take your definitions in your mind, okay? Because a cult of thought and like this, if you spend an hour a day listening to somebody, or an hour a week, like what you do when you go to church back in the day, that is a cult. A religion is a cult. Cult is just a negative word for it, that really religion's probably created to separate themselves and make them more special and divine. You know what I'm saying? But right now, there is nothing divine about. I am the channel that whatever the thoughts of consciousness are that we all have comes through, and I relay it to an audience. That's what a podcast is. So if you don't understand that, you have to. Then it's not for you. somebody who's listening to this right now is they are wanting to hear the most real thing that they can hear. That's why they're listening to this. You know, I want to talk more about, I wanted to plug more about this guest that I have coming up, but I wanted to talk more about some disagreements I've been having with the sphere of people that I've been building. That was what I was talking about 15 minutes ago. You start to have abrasions, right? Because that's what happens in any industry, any arts, and everybody is trying to be as unique as they can be. But, and they all think that they know the source. And guess what? I did start from the source, but it's also, you can change definitions. Like, to say, just because the first podcast where they called it a podcast was Joe Rogan and that fuck from LA there who works on cars. I don't really like him. Podcast One guy. His podcast is called Podcast One, ONE. I don't consider him the first, but just, you know what? You change the definition a little bit where, you allow radio kind of, and then all of a sudden there's different godfathers of this form of media. It's never been like this though, where it can be free for everyone and accessible for everyone through the internet. That is what's different about podcasts versus radio and stuff. Podcasts depend on the internet. Radio is something different. It's in the fucking airwaves, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So there's that. But everybody, all the people that I'm meeting and everybody who's involved in this, they all like to think that, they don't all like to think that but they are trying to make podcasting something different, like an organized TV network, like what the major corporations do and stuff. And that's not what this is, but that's maybe why they won't be successful, which is fine. I'm not saying I will ever be successful, I'm just saying that I think the understanding that the listener wants something genuine is very important. Because I have had some disagreements lately with people who want to. You can have things you don't want to talk about, but on a show, on a podcast, as a person hosting or as a guest. But you don't. It's not like news where you go, hey, you can't talk to me about this. You come in as a person to person, and while you're talking, if there's something you don't want to talk about, you go, can we not talk about that? That's how being genuine works. There's nothing behind the scenes behind me where people are telling me things that I need to say or things they want me to say. You know, like you'll notice there's a lot of people now that'll go, no politics, and I can feel that, okay? But that doesn't mean that if we naturally start to talk about politics a little bit, I'm not going to talk about politics myself, because I'll talk about whatever I want to talk about. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't fucking talk about it. You don't respond to me. That's how a conversation works. So I don't like it when a person that I am going to talk to or I hold in a high regard doesn't understand that basic principle of a high-level person-to-person, like communication, right? So that's that. So anyway, now let's be some positivity for a second. So I have a comedian coming on who's quite young. Who knows? He might cancel on me, all right? He might see this episode and might cancel on me. But it's okay, because life goes on. We have Alex, the race car driver, coming on too, but he's a hardworking guy, so I'm just trying to we're going to work him in as soon as we can find a nice day, a nice chill summer day here coming up. And he's also doing some races and stuff. And he's been refurbishing his car. I think he's cultivating some cool things to tell me about. So that's how that goes. Thanks to social media for, that's how you keep informed with your friends and follow that shit. So I have a comedian coming on by the name of Jarvis. His name is Jarvis. That might be why he's a comedian, because that's a pretty fucked up name. But you know what? I have a pretty fucked up name too. Stephan. So, but that's what creates this type of shit. I don't know what creates this type of shit, because you know what? I have a bone to pick, because I've been wondering what has created this in me too, where I want to be outward with my feelings and thoughts, like how I am in this podcast, in this manifesto, if you will. And I think that it's been women. It's been my experience with women so far in my life. It started around, I started dating. I was such a hardcore teen with school and sports. I didn't start dating until I was about 17. Oh, I was just finished my thought about Jarvis. I've got a guy named Jarvis Zawatsky. He's a comedian. He's very, very active here in Saskatoon. I know he hosts shows, so I have all the most respect for this guy, even though his name is a little funny like mine. But that wouldn't be why I lose respect for a guy. Sorry. Cool comedian coming on. Amazing for him to say yes. All the respect in the world for this guy. He's young. I think he's 22. So amazing abilities and I can't wait to get him on here. Maybe talk to him and see how his brain works. I'm hoping that next week I'm gonna have a fucking awesome thing for you. All kinds of cool shit really coming here. Life is exciting. So anyway, I was saying that I started dating at about 17. I was trying to explain what I feel like is leading to me being so clingy to comedy and so in that way. A lot of times that people will say that trauma causes that, like, that comedic bone to really intensify in a person's body where they want to provide that type of entertainment for others, make themselves into a joke to make other people happy. I really feel like it's been my experience with women. Like I grew up without a dad. If any of the listeners don't know that, I grew up with two moms. I didn't have a dad, which is fine. Was fine for me. But it maybe it gives me not as good of an understanding, because I understand women, but I fucking see them as equals, because I was raised by two women, so I put them on such a pedestal. It's been, my relationships with women have been very tricky, and it has been, if you want to call it traumatic, I think in my life it's been one of the only, other than bullying for being a bastard that I am. The only trauma I've experienced so far is women, with emotional, with the way that how relationships are, and me I'm not really equipped or strong enough. And that must be something that you get from a dad. If I could pinpoint anything that you get from a dad raising you, it must be that security, that safety feeling that you get. The Force, if you will, from Star Wars. I'm watching Obi-Wan right now. That safety that you get is what really allows you to feel a sense of strength when sometimes women try to break you down, which is fine, ladies. I get it. So, but I don't have that. I'm not very well trained in that strength, so I'm easy to break down, which is not good. It's proved traumatic in my relationship processes with females. So I wanted to just talk about that. That's the conclusion on that insight towards me as a human being. Maybe that'll help you in your relationships with females. It's very important, your relationships with females in life, to happiness, and obviously that's how you create another one of you. So it's important for reproduction, which is the sole tenet of natural selection and evolution and reproduction. So that's life. That's life is what we're talking. I just digressed literally down to life. I think let's finish this Corona and let's move on to the next one, for God's sakes. Maybe we can clear our heads. We're about 15 minutes from a finished episode here, but I'm getting pretty dark. Whenever I talk about women, it gets a little dark. I wish it didn't. And man, is Corona an amazing beer, I don't know why the flavor is so good. It's just like Stella, it's a Mexican version of. Is Corona actually Mexican, or is it some other type of South American? Let's quickly find out for the crew here. Brewed in Canada. Well, okay, but I I don't know. I don't know, people. I think it's all just a gimmick, isn't it? Just a bunch of poison water. So anyway, swinging us back around to my relationships with other not comedy even, just other podcast personalities, and this guy that I've got coming on next week. He's not going to even be drinking, which is cool. I respect. I'm going to bring him 2 non-alcoholic Heinekens, but that's respectable. So that's my point. Is I have a little bit of rules on the show, but I'm just burping here, people. Sorry, hiccups a little bit. But I'm good with whatever, especially drinking. No, yeah, you don't force somebody to drink. Even though, thanks to all my previous guests who have followed the rules, especially Daniel. Shout out to Daniel Boardman over there in Toronto, fighting the good Jewish fight. Whatever he's doing over there, he was doing crazy shit with before with defaming people and just people that he thought were his enemies. A little bit schizo, a little bit, but he's also, whenever you're a leader in the community, it is something to be looked up at, even if you make mistakes. I think he's a great guy. I don't know what happened to his following. I think it got cut down a little bit because he got in some legal trouble, and I think some certain things happened. But I don't know. All alleged. I don't know what's going on with him. He's still putting out Daniel Boardman Uninterrupted is his little 5-minute rant show that he does every now and then. So yeah, this Jarvis comedian. He's not even gonna. He's at 22. What are you really? You're fresh out of fucking high school, so even less to draw from than me. Speaking of, what do we have to draw from, and what inspires us to be comedians. So he has even less than me, but that's what it is. It doesn't matter. We're all just soul. A soul is just this. It's like a tube that life comes through, and we all have different sized tubes. He's got a big tube, Oh, for fuck's sakes. Maybe we should end this episode. Start talking about human souls like they're toilet tubes. Good Lord. Jesus Christ. Yeah, this is a podcast, people. This is a Canadian podcast. This is a purist podcast. Like what podcasts are, and I thank you for clicking on this and maybe giving me a little bit of your time. I hope that you can give me more of your time in the future, because that's all that this is, really. Commitment to community and individualized information processing like this, it really just does come down to donating time. And all I need is an hour a week. That's what this is, and we can all be real. We can all preserve our Canadian culture together and build on it. And not let it be hijacked by anything. Not that culture gets hijacked. It can't ever get hijacked. Culture, I think by definition, culture has change built into it, and that's what I have problems with people who are. If I could get a little conservative for a second. When we talk about reparations and culture and the Native Americans and African Americans and all these people who feel their cultures are this, that, or the other, appropriated, blah, blah, blah. I'm with you. But, also, I feel that change is the one element maybe of white culture that has made our culture that maybe you guys should maybe adopt and realize that your culture is still always there. It's preserved by who you are. Don't be so insecure about your culture. It's preserved right here. I understand that there's a monarchy and my British culture is preserved through that bullshit. So, because I feel so comfortable with that, that's why I'm able to be so flippant right now. I know that maybe a high level intellectual could criticize me in that way right now. But no though. I really do think that culture comes down to individual. Religion, culture, media. These are all things that really, if they're being managed at the highest level, should be individualized. You shouldn't be outsourcing these things. So that is my intersection of strength, personal strength and culture, and how I think that a lot of other cultures any culture that is showing fear for assimilation and blah, blah, blah. I do think that is a little bit weak. I think that's a little that could be strengthened for sure. So, anyway, I think this is about good for today, you guys. Shout out to my Canadians out there. I love everybody. And if you listen to this for even a minute, if you clicked on it, gave me a view, if you came and you subscribed to the YouTube channel, which is ultimately what I really need, YouTube, and then eventually create a Patreon, eventually do ads, That's how this becomes a long-term thing. Even though it's going to be a long-term thing, even if I have to become a homeless person, probably. I'm doing this until I completely. So, I was going to talk about my neighbor. I'm going to. You know what? I can do that today. This goes out to my neighbor of one of my abodes, one of my chateaus that I. I thought of it because I thought of burning out, and then I started thinking about what I have and how I won't ever burn out. I've got myself set up so I shouldn't ever burn out. Other than this bullshit housing crisis that they always, whenever inflation, they always try to do all this fake shit. You got to learn what to believe and not believe in the mainstream too. That's why it's so tricky. If you come to just individualized podcasts, it's much easier. That's why I think it's so easy. But you have to do your own assessment of these various things because they're talking about how they think there's going to be a housing crisis, which is crazy. In Canada, we have such high immigration. We could start doing what United States did in 2008 with the 1% down on buying houses, and we wouldn't have a housing crisis until 2072 here in Canada. We just don't have the population for it. We don't have. It's just we don't have the volatility for it in our housing market with the space and the immigration that we have and the public perception that we have of our great country. A housing crisis will not happen. There you go. So that is my analysis of that, folks. And why was I? Stability and how I'll let this burn out. And I was going to talk about my neighbor. Yeah, so I had built a fence at one of my abodes that I've got a few dwellings that I aforementioned purchased. That I retain an ownership permit of. So one of my neighbors, if you want to use that French pronunciation, neighbors. He took down. Oh, is that a mouse? Oh my God, is that an animal? Oh, that's a bird. Oh, jeez. Is that a bird? I think I just found a dead bird on my floor. Oh my God, at first I thought it was a dead rat or a dead mouse. There's no rats in Canada. I thought it was a dead mouse, but I think that's a little birdie who may have had a tough time. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. He looks old. He looks fully grown. He's probably reproduced. He's fine, okay? Oh God, what was I talking about? At least I have an excuse this time for losing my train of thought. Oh, jeez. Yeah, he took down a fence that I built, which was a perfectly good fucking fence, just to build a different fence. It's like, what a prick, And then he sends me a message. My fence is private, because he took down my gate. My drainage off of my house was attached to the fence that was existing there. And, he took all that stuff down. And so I was just like, hey, put it back up, though. And he didn't put it back up, so it pisses me off. And no, I have to put it back up. And he was like, oh, my fence is private. Even though for the past 3 years, he's been throwing sandbags, bending the fence that I built, bending it all up and fucking it up. Now he has the gall to go, oh, my fence is private property. If you want to, attach your spouts like you had them, make sure you erect your own posts. Fuck you, man. Fuck you. So that's what I had to say to one of my neighbors. So I just went a little Tim Dillon on you for a second there. Sorry about that, folks. So anyway, keep living your lives out there. Thanks for tuning in. Like I was saying, if you gave me any of your time, I appreciate it. You're better than me. If you're giving me your time if you found me and you're listening to me, you're me, but better. Like, well, go listen to the better podcasts like Joe Rogan Experience, okay? But take it as a grain of salt because he's getting a little bit righty-tighty. And there's all these other great podcasts. Tim Dillon is great. He's wild, though. Take him, again, as a hyperbolic person. Go listen to Andrew Santino. He's great, and he's right in the middle, a little left-leaning. Go listen to Theo Vaughn, a little right, There's all these great podcasters out there. I really am liking Matt and Shane's secret podcast. Shane Gillis and Matt McCusker. They are a good. So go listen to these, and then you can talk about scientists, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris. Go listen to these podcasts. But also, if you are listening to me, you are better than me because you are hearing them and you're hearing me. So I thank you because you're better than me. I hope you liked this, and stay tuned for episode 48, which will be with Jarvis Sawatsky probably, or Alex the race car driver. And have a good rest of your day, folks. This farewell is lingering on. That's because I was pretty happy with today's episode. All right. See you later. Canadian Talk out.